All right, you guys, so let's go ahead and get started here on lesson 5.7. This is part 2, so solving quadratics by taking the square root. So we're going to go ahead and once again, we have square root, plus or minus sign, function, and x-intercepts. We did see on yesterday's lesson the plus or minus sign just talk about having two solutions whenever you're taking the square root in an equation. So let's go ahead and get started here. So let me actually just make this bigger for you guys, and then we can begin. So in this case, guys, once again, it works very similar to the lesson we did yesterday, previous lesson, part 1. So let's go ahead and get started here with example 1. Goal in this case, guys, is to solve for an x here. So we do have the equation of parentheses x plus 3 squared minus a 4 equal to 0. Now, in this case, guys, there's actually a couple ways we can do this, but there's actually one way where it just makes our life simpler. So our goal in this case is to solve for x. We actually have to isolate this variable here. So in order for us to do that, we do have to move basically everything to the other side, leave the x alone. So starting off in this case, guys, since the x is inside the parentheses along with the squared, I will be focused on everything that's on the outside first. So in this case, I want to go ahead and actually get rid of this negative 4. So in order for us to get rid of it, we do have to do the opposite. So I'm going to go ahead and add a 4 to both sides. So that's going to give me x plus 3 squared equal to 4. Once again, the 4 minus a 4 canceled. So those got canceled. Now let's go ahead and move on to our next step. Our goal in this case, guys, now is to get rid of our squared. And in this case yesterday, we saw that the opposite of squaring a number is actually taking the square root. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and take the square root on both sides. And by taking the square root, that actually cancels out both the squared and the square root. And we're left with, in this case, x plus 3 equals square root of 4 in this case is a 2. But since we took the square root in an equation, we do have two solutions. It's a positive and a negative 2. Once again, guys, whenever you take the square root in an equation, there is going to be two solutions, a positive and a negative. Just because if I were to square a positive 2, I get a 4. And if I square a negative 2, I also get a 4. So that's where our two solutions come from. So next step in this case, guys, is to leave the x alone once again. So we want to go ahead and get rid of this 3. So opposite of adding a 3 in this case is subtracting. So let's go ahead and subtract 3 to both sides. And we have the following. X equals negative 3 plus or minus 2. Now this here isn't our final answer because we do need to solve for the x here. So I'm actually going to go ahead and break this apart into two sections. First section in this case, I have x equals negative 3 plus a 2. Second section in this case is x equals negative 3 minus a 2. Once again, guys, we did say that we do have a plus or minus sign, which means there's two solutions there. I have a positive 2, which we have on this side, and I also have a negative 2, which is there. So let's go ahead and solve for these individually. I have x equals negative 3 plus a 2. That in this case is going to be x equal to negative 1. On the other side, right-hand side, I have x equals negative 3 minus a 2. Same signs add, and you keep the sign. So x in this case is going to be equal to a negative 5. So our answer in this case is x equals negative 1 and x equals 5. All right. Comments or questions on this here, guys, before we move on here? All right, let's go ahead and move on then. And here's the next one, guys, example 2. So in this case, guys, we want to go ahead and find the zeros of the function, and we have f of x equals parentheses x minus a 2 squared minus a 9. And I did mention also in the previous lesson that zeros of the function actually talk about the x-intercept. just do I and t. And in the x-intercept, or whenever we're trying to find our x-intercept, a y is always going to be equal to 0. Now, in this case, we are not given y, but we are given f of x. And f of x in this case, guys, is just a fancy way of saying y. So, if f of x equals y and y equals 0, then f of x in this case will be equal to 0. So let's go ahead and make our equation here equal to 0. We no longer have the f of x, we now have a 0, or equal to 0. Alright, so once again, we want to go ahead and solve for x here. So let's go ahead and move everything to one side. Alright, so starting off in this case, guys, once again, you want to go ahead and get rid of everything that's on the outside, then we'll go ahead and focus on the squared and what's inside of the parentheses. So I'm going to go ahead and first add 9 to both sides. Add 9. And that's going to give me 9 equal to x minus a 2 squared. So there's no longer anything on the outside where we have the squared. So my next step in this case is to get rid of that squared term. In order for us to get rid of it, I will be taking the square root on both sides. So that is going to give us x minus a 2 on the right hand side. And on the left hand side, I'm actually going to go ahead and get a positive and a negative 3. Positive and negative 3. Next step in this case, guys, is to add 2 to both sides. Once again, goes to leave the x alone. And that gives us a 2 plus or minus 3 equal to x. Once again, this is not our final answer because I should be having 2 solutions. So I have x equals 2 plus a 3 and x equals 2 minus a 3. Once again, the only one that changed signs in this case was the 3. So positive and negative. So in this case, let's go ahead and solve for that. 2 plus 3 is 5. And 2 minus a 3 is negative 1. So this here is our solution. Alright. So in this case, guys, this will actually be concluding the lesson. You do have